Hello, MSIS committee. Welcome back for our final presentation. We are Sun Devils Green Growth, and we'll be sharing about how islands are rising up together to tackle climate change with you today. As always, our group consists of Hailey Campbell, Latrell Kaye, and myself, Tammy Nguyen.
Islands are among the most impacted groups to climate change due to their geography, dependence on vulnerable ocean ecosystems, limited resource availability, nature-dependent economies, and other physical and economic characteristics. Current and future climate risks include sea level rise, increasing frequency and severity of tropical cyclones, increasing air and sea temperatures, and changing rainfall patterns. These impacts result in the degradation of freshwater resources, flooding of coastal areas, reduction in food yields, increased coral bleaching, loss of human life and biodiversity, and damage to infrastructure, and among others. Due to the smaller scale and local limitations on resources, islands are better able to understand how human and natural influences affect resource availability and adapt accordingly. For example, in Hawaii, Malama Aina, taking care of the land and waters that feed them, is a guiding principle in their way of life, which has informed how they have been autonomously responding to natural disasters for hundreds of years. Ultimately, our project recognized that because island economies and islanders have experienced adapting to a scarcity of resources and threats from natural disasters, they are best positioned to help the island Earth navigate towards a more sustainable future and serve as a community of practice for implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. While islands are leading adaptation efforts, they continue to struggle by financial, political, and technical capacity, as well as in identifying ways to measure impacts. In recognition of these challenges, the Local 2030 Islands Network seeks to bring islands together to support each other in building these capacities through promoting the design and implementation of island-led green growth initiatives. Green growth means fostering economic growth and development while ensuring that natural assets continue to provide the resources and environmental services on which our well-being relies. Creating a green growth initiative offers an opportunity to understand how climate change is impacting islands and what island communities need to thrive in a changing world. As such, a green growth initiative encourages islands to design an action framework in partnership with community leaders to spearhead locally and culturally relevant solutions for implementing the SDGs and tackling climate change. Our project seeks to amplify best practices of islands that are collaboratively working with their communities to promote sustainable development and adapt to climate change, while leading the way in measuring progress on the SDGs. As just mentioned, one way islands can develop a collaborative strategy for implementing the SDGs is through designing a green growth initiative. Specifically, this project details the process island leaders from existing green growth initiatives in Hawaii, Guam, and Tasmania use to launch their efforts and combines key findings into a framework for other islands to use in creating green growth initiatives that fit their local needs.
To achieve our goal of amplifying green growth efforts, we chose to create an evidence-based, locally relevant, and culturally informed framework that is easily adoptable, adaptable, and applicable. An adaptable framework will enable islands to create a unique green growth initiative that fits their island's needs while promoting a networking and knowledge sharing across island communities. In designing our framework, we look to the UN roadmap for localizing and implementing the SDGs. We chose to model our framework after this roadmap because it combines a series of processes for localizing the SDGs with international examples, which is how we plan to display our findings from an island context. We studied green growth initiatives as case studies through interviewing 10 green growth leaders from Hawaii, Guam, and Tasmania. Working with case studies enabled us to collect a variety of experiences, assumptions, opinions, and outcomes from different islands in a real life setting while examining sustainability practices within specific cultural, environmental, and social circumstances. We then analyzed our interviews using SWOT analyses in order to uncover opportunities and risks of green growth initiatives not previously identified and aid in repositioning islands towards higher performance by capitalizing on their strengths. Each of these tools were instrumental in helping us to produce an island-specific framework for localizing the SDGs to support islands in adapting to climate change and building an equitable future. Through interviewing green growth leaders of Hawaii, Guam, and Tasmania, we uncovered how their experiences shaped the development of their respective green growth initiatives. First, the significance of high-level catalyzing events for fostering political will, such as the UN Global Agenda Conference, and increasing community buy-in for a green growth initiative. Second, the importance of collaborating with community members such as the Polynesian Voyage Societies, the University of Guam, and Kamehameha schools to be involved in designing the priorities and focusing efforts on what really matters. Third, we learned that to enhance trust among stakeholders, it is vital a non-governmental organization facilitates and leads the design and implementation processes of the Green Growth Initiative. Lastly, the act of naming is a symbolic ceremony. The name is the first thing community members and island leaders from around the world will see. As such, the name should be something that defines the goals of the initiative and delivers a strong first impression to empower stakeholders to dedicate their time and effort to the initiative. In addition to the key findings for the final deliverable, we learned that it is the face-to-face, or I guess screen-to-screen interaction that is most valuable. Even though we had to follow up with some interviewees after our scheduled time, it was very important we make a verbal and visual connection with our stakeholders, as conversations and oral sharing are integral in island connections. Overall, the interviews were our favorite part of this project because we were able to capture the nuance and complexities from the very people who were a part of it all. Especially in these times of COVID, having conversations with knowledgeable and empowering people was refreshing and beneficial, not just for our analysis purposes, but for fostering authentic relationships with our project partners.
Using the 10 interviews and background knowledge gained from our conversations with the Local 2030 Islands Network, our team achieved our goal of designing a locally relevant, culturally informed green growth framework. The framework is 30 pages long and begins by sharing the background behind the development of green growth as a strategy for implementing the SDGs and adapting to climate change on islands. Specifically, this includes how a partnership with the Global Island Partnership grew into Hawaii Green Growth and now the Local 2030 Islands Network, and what influenced Hawaii, Guam, and Tasmania to take on the challenge of launching green growth initiatives. We follow the story with a detailed explanation of what green growth is in order to set the stage for sharing the 4 design principles and 16 priority action recommendations that make up the framework. The 4 design principles, which are aligned with those of our project partner, include identifying diverse leaders, participants, and partners, strengthening long-term political leadership and community support, designing an action framework for a localized green growth initiative, and measuring and tracking SDG progress. Each design principle has a set of priority action recommendations that were recommended by island leaders for existing initiatives as tools for ensuring the successful creation of an action framework for a green growth initiative. As you can see on the screen here, each action item contains a description of the implementation process, key insights from island leaders on that specific action, exemplar actions from Hawaii, Guam, and Tasmania to serve as an example of what implementing that action item might look like, and possible barriers based on what challenges island leaders faced, with suggested solutions for overcoming them. The framework concludes with a couple of pages of advice from island leaders. We found this section to be the most integral part of the final deliverable because it shares specific tips and experiences from island leaders for being successful. A few of the important pieces of advice include building trust among stakeholders by establishing norms early on and validating everyone's contributions, not being afraid to be different and only focusing on the SDGs that work for the island leaders at that time, and listening to the community often and early on in the development process.
While we were successful, we did have to make some changes. In addition to conducting interviews, we had hoped to distribute survey questionnaires to build support for our ideas and plan to share a draft of the framework with other island leaders. Unfortunately, we were not able to receive approval from HGG to distribute surveys. We also found in our interviews that Tasmanian Way was still in the process of building their coalition, so we agreed that it would not be appropriate timing to distribute the surveys. We were not able to obtain feedback on our framework from other islands due to concerns from our project partner over not wanting to give the wrong idea that the framework has been completely vetted and is ready to send out. As a result of both the lack of surveys and feedback from islands who have yet to design a green growth initiative, we were not able to build the efficacy of our framework. Nevertheless, the process followed by the 3 islands is supported by the United Nations, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and GLISPA members, which does provide us with some level of efficacy and support for the ideas presented in our final framework. Lastly, we did face some communication issues with our project partners in terms of obtaining feedback and adhering to agreed upon meeting times. However, these challenges did not hold us back from creating our deliverables as we were able to adapt and build confidence in our own sustainability knowledge to move forward.
We definitely learned a lot in this process in regards to what we could have done differently. Having more specific interview questions would have helped us to refine the exemplary actions included in the framework, allowing us to save time on trying to obtain information via email post-interview. Second, within our internal group, we learned how to strengthen our communication, which contributed to our confidence in ourselves to apply and articulate our sustainability knowledge we know we all have. Thirdly, while we spent a lot of time establishing an internal code of collaboration, we did not prioritize the code of collaboration with our project partner, which would have mitigated our organizational communication challenges. This experience taught us that without a formal agreement, setting a calendar invite may not be strong enough to ensure meetings are upheld. Additionally, a formal agreement outlining the timeline and needs of our team throughout the semester may have made it easier to push our partners to provide their feedback in a timely manner. Lastly, everyone has a hope that they will contribute to immediate change, but this project confirmed that the best sustainability solutions take time. It'll take time for the Local 2030 Island Network to be in a place where they feel confident sharing the framework and have the capacity to support islands 100% in utilizing the recommendations. While there is not currently a significant change in islands' adaptive capacity to climate impacts as a result of our efforts, nor increase in action on the SDGs, we are confident that these changes will occur in the future when the framework is distributed.
At this point, you're probably wondering where our final framework is going. While it will not be sent out to islands right away, it will be used as an internal document for the Local 2030 Islands Network. This is because the organization is still new and trying to figure out its path forward, and the framework needs a bit of flair in terms of political technicalities. For now, the Local 2030 Islands Network will require all incoming staff members to read the framework and use it to shape their long-term strategy for helping islands implement green growth initiatives. The Local 2030 Islands Network did inform us, however, that they still plan to share a framework with islands in the future. While the Local 2030 Islands Network is not in a place to share the framework quite yet, we do have a few recommendations for the future. First, we recommend our clients share the framework with the steering committee members to gain feedback and set the stage for a path forward. Second, we recommend that our project partner build out the implementation process in the framework as more islands implement green growth initiatives. We suggest this process to be done through interviews, as we found the conversations we had with island leaders to be the most valuable resource for collecting good practices and key insights to include. Lastly, due to their strong intent on launching a green growth initiative, we also recommend that the Local 2030 Islands Network launch a pilot run of the framework with Puerto Rico Green Growth, Tasmania Way, and Dene Green Growth to determine if the proposed recommendations are effective. We would like to take this time to acknowledge and thank all of the amazing, wise, and inspirational island leaders who contributed to our project. Without their insights and willingness to share their stories, we would not have been able to produce our final deliverable. Through learning from the lived experiences of island leaders taking charge on designing green growth initiatives, our team was able to successfully achieve our goal of creating a green growth framework for islands. As confirmed by interviews with island leaders, the proposed framework recognizes and prioritizes Indigenous island experiences and knowledge that has driven island sustainability and adaptation for centuries. We are thrilled with how our final deliverable turned out and are excited to see how the Local 2030 Islands Network builds off of it in the future. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.